He collected women like others collect art. He used them, admired them, and threw them away without remorse. Until one young woman crossed his path, bringing a light he never knew he needed. If this story caught your interest, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us which city you're watching from. In the heart of Manhattan, where concrete embraces the sky and hides secrets in the shadows of its mirrored corridors, Ethan Morgan observed the city from his penthouse in Tribeca. At 35, he wasn't just the owner of a financial empire, he was the empire itself. Each of his movements echoed through markets, each decision reverberated in lives he didn't even know, and that was exactly how he liked it. The world, for Ethan, had always been a chessboard where he dictated the rules. He grew up under the command of Victor Morgan, a father who transformed love into currency and affection into a sign of weakness. From childhood, he learned that showing tenderness was giving ammunition to the enemy. And everyone, absolutely, everyone was a potential enemy. Women entered and left his life like pieces in a game he mastered with expertise. He knew exactly which words to use, which gestures to make, how to seduce without surrendering. They were like artworks in a private gallery, admired, temporarily possessed, then replaced by more interesting ones. None ever managed to break through the ice barrier that protected what remained of his soul, until that October night when fate decided to shuffle the cards. The charity event at the Plaza Hotel gathered New York's elite in the name of a noble, cause that, ironically, served more to cleanse consciences than to transform realities. Ethan was there out of social obligation, performing the ritual of appearing, being photographed, making his generous donation, and leaving. It was a performance he had mastered for years. That's when he saw her. Olivia was leaning against the wall of the ballroom, wearing a discreet uniform from the catering company, trying to blend into the shadows as if wanting to disappear. Her brown hair was tied in a simple bun, some rebellious strands framing a face that seemed to have been sculpted by delicacy itself. There was something in her large, frightened eyes that hit him like a punch to the stomach. She wasn't trying to attract attention. She didn't wear a provocative neckline or calculated smiles. She didn't flirt with looks or toss her hair seductively. It was precisely this total absence of artifice that made her magnetic to the eyes of a man accustomed to deciphering games of seduction. Ethan watched her serve canapés to guests, noticing how she lowered her eyes whenever someone thanked her, how her hands trembled slightly when holding the silver tray, how she bit her lower lip when nervous. Each of her gestures was pure truth, without masks, without theater. Something wild awakened inside him. It wasn't just carnal desire, it was hunger for something he couldn't name, an urgent need to possess that purity, to be the first to touch, that untouched soul, to break that innocence with his own hands and then protect it from the entire world. When Olivia's eyes met his for the first time, she felt a shiver run down her spine. There was something in the gaze of that tall man, with impeccable suits and magnetic presence, that made her want to run and stay at the same time. It was like facing a storm, dangerous, but impossible to ignore. Ethan approached with the confidence of someone who had never heard a no. Olivia instinctively retreated, pressing the tray against her chest like a shield. "You shouldn't be here," he said, his deep voice carrying a tone that she couldn't interpret as either threat or promise. I'm working," Olivia stammered, feeling her heart race. "I'm filling in for a colleague." "What's your name?" The question came out more like an order than polite curiosity. "Olivia," she whispered, unable to look away from those dark eyes that seemed to search her soul. He repeated the name slowly, as if tasting a rare wine. "Olivia," like a peace offering. An almost imperceptible smile touched his lips. "It suits you perfectly." She didn't understand what he meant, but something in the way he spoke made her stomach knot with nervousness. There was an intensity there that frightened and fascinated her in equal measure. "I need to get back to work," she murmured, trying to move around him. Ethan didn't budge. "Where do you work?" "At a diner in Chelsea." The answer came out before she could think whether she should give personal information to a stranger. "And where do you live?" Now she faced him with a spark of courage in her eyes. Why do you want to know? The question surprised him. For years, no one had questioned him. People simply answered, eager to please Ethan Morgan. But this girl, with her simple dress and frightened doe eyes, had the audacity to question his intentions. And that made him even more obsessed. "Because I want to get to know you better," he answered, with a brutal honesty that caught him off guard. Olivia felt her cheeks burn. Never had a man shown interest in her so directly. In fact, few men had shown any interest. At 22, she had limited experience with the opposite sex, limited to polite conversations and shy smiles exchanged at college or work. "I don't think that's a good idea," she said, finally managing to step aside. Ethan followed her with his gaze as she walked away, each of her movements etching into his memory like a brand seared with a hot iron. For the first time in years, someone had refused his attention, and instead of irritating him, it intrigued him deeply. He spent the rest of the night watching Olivia work, noticing how she avoided passing near him, how her hands trembled when she felt his gaze. He was accustomed to hunting, but this prey was different. She wasn't running for fear of being caught. She was running by instinct of self-preservation, and that only increased his hunger. When the night ended and guests began to disperse, Ethan waited outside the hotel. He saw Olivia leave through the service entrance, exchanging her uniform for simple clothes, faded jeans and a white blouse that highlighted her light olive skin. She walked to the bus stop, constantly looking over her shoulder, as if she knew she was being watched. Ethan followed her from a distance, watching her board the bus that would take her back to Chelsea. He mentally noted the line, the time, the direction, all information he would use to map her completely. That night, for the first time in years, Ethan Morgan couldn't sleep. He stood on the balcony of his penthouse, drinking whiskey and thinking about those frightened eyes, that raw purity that emanated from her like perfume. Olivia had awakened something in his chest that he thought had died long ago. The desperate need to possess something completely, to be the first to touch, the first to corrupt, the first to protect. And Ethan Morgan always got what he wanted. Always. 3 days later, Olivia still couldn't forget those dark eyes that seemed to have searched her soul at the hotel. She worked at Mrs. Jenkins's diner, trying to concentrate on orders, but occasionally caught herself looking through the window, as if expecting to see that impeccably dressed man walking down the Chelsea sidewalk. "Girl, you're in the clouds today," commented Mrs. Jenkins, a 60-year-old woman who had taken her in as an employee and almost as a daughter after she lost her parents in a car accident. "Did something happen at that fancy event you went to work?" Olivia felt her face heat up. "Nothing much, Mrs. Jenkins. Just rich people doing charity to feel good about themselves." But it was a lie. It had been much more than that. It had been the encounter with a man who awakened sensations she didn't even know existed inside her. A confusing mixture of fear and fascination that kept her awake during the night, tossing and turning in the bed of the small apartment she shared with 2 roommates in an old Chelsea building. Meanwhile, 15 miles away, Ethan was in his office on the top floor of a skyscraper in Manhattan's financial district, with a complete file on Olivia Stone open on his desk. He had hired the city's best private investigator, and in just 2 days had her entire life in his hands. Olivia Stone, 22, orphaned 4 months ago, only child of Maria Stone, a nurse who died in an accident, along with James Stone, a DE-sized mechanic. No other known relatives. Studied education at the State University, but had suspended her course after her parents' death to work full-time. Lived in a 1-bedroom apartment in Chelsea, shared expenses with 2 other girls. Had worked at Mrs. Jenkins's diner for 2 years, never involved with drugs, no criminal record, didn't frequent parties. A simple, clean life without major complications. Virgin. The word wasn't in the report, but Ethan was certain. There was something in the way she reacted to his proximity, in the purity of her gestures, in the total absence of malice in her eyes. Olivia was untouched by the world, and that made Ethan's blood boil in his veins. He closed the file and picked up the phone, dialing his personal assistant. "Richard, I need you to take care of some things for me. Discreetly." "Yes, sir." There's a diner in Chelsea, West 23rd Street, number 847, Mrs. Jenkins. I want you to find a way to pay off all her debts with suppliers, anonymously. Understood, sir. And there's an old building on 17th Street, number 234, apartment 302. I want you to hire a company to repair the electrical system of the entire building, without the residents knowing who's paying. Yes, sir. Anything else? Ethan hesitated for a moment. Send flowers to apartment 302. White roses, no card. When he hung up the phone, he felt a strange satisfaction run through him. He was taking care of her without her knowing, protecting her, improving her life behind the scenes. It was a new sensation, almost paternal. No, it wasn't that. It was possessive, like caring for something he already considered his. Olivia received the flowers on Friday night. She arrived home after an exhausting day, at the diner, and found a bouquet of 12 white roses at her apartment door. There was no card, no identification. Must be a mistake, she said to herself. But she picked up the flowers and took them inside anyway. They were beautiful, fresh, expensive. Definitely not for her. But when she put the flowers in an improvised vase, an empty jelly jar, she felt a strange shiver. What if it wasn't a mistake? What if someone had sent them deliberately to her? The face of the man from the hotel flashed in her mind, but she shook her head, pushing away the thought. It was paranoia. Men like that didn't send flowers to girls like her. On Saturday morning, Olivia woke up to the sound of drills and hammers. Workers were replacing all the electrical wiring in the building. When she asked the building manager who was paying for the renovation, he said it had been a company hired by the original construction firm to resolve warranty issues. Olivia found it strange, since the building was more than 20 years old, but was happy to know that she would finally no longer have problems with power outages. Ethan, meanwhile, was having difficulty concentrating on work. He thought about Olivia constantly. He imagined what it would be like to touch that skin that seemed to have been kissed by the sun. What it would be like to hear his name being whispered by those rosy lips. What it would be like to be the first man to awaken desire in those innocent eyes. On Monday, he decided it was time for a more direct approach. Olivia was leaving the diner when she saw him. Ethan was leaning against a black luxury car exactly across the street, as if waiting for her. Her heart raced, and she felt her legs go weak. He crossed the street with confident steps, his eyes fixed on her like a predator who had finally found his prey. "Hello, Olivia." "What are you doing here?" The question came out more aggressive than she intended, but she was scared. How did he know where she worked? "I came to invite you to dinner." "I can't." Olivia looked around, searching for an escape route. "I don't even know you." "Ethan Morgan," he said, extending his hand. "Now we know each other." Olivia didn't shake his hand. "That doesn't change anything. I'm not having dinner with a stranger." "Why not?" The question caught her off guard. Why not? Because men like him weren't interested in girls like her except for dubious reasons. Because everything about him screamed danger. Because when he looked at her, she felt as if she was being undressed, analyzed, evaluated like merchandise. "Because I don't want to," she said finally, moving around him to continue walking. Ethan followed her. "Everyone wants something, Olivia. What's your price?" She stopped abruptly and turned to face him, her eyes shining with indignation. "I don't have a price. And if you think I do, you're talking to the wrong person." For the second time, someone defied Ethan Morgan. And for the second time, instead of irritating him, it deeply excited him. Olivia had fire inside her, hidden beneath all that sweetness, and he wanted to be burned by that fire. "Everyone has a price," he said softly. "I'll still discover yours." Olivia felt a chill run down her spine. There was something in his voice, a promise or a threat, that made her quicken her pace. When she reached the bus stop, she looked back and saw that he was still there, watching her with that disturbing intensity. During the entire trip back home, Olivia felt observed. It was paranoia, she tried to convince herself, but when she got off the bus and walked to her building, she had the sensation that footsteps were following her. When she turned to look, the street was empty. That night, she found another gift at her apartment door. This time, it was a book. 100. Years of Solitude by Gabriel Garcia Marquez. There was no note, but Olivia knew who it was from. Inside the cover was a gold bookmark with an engraving, "For Olivia, who brought light where there was only shadow." Her heart raced. How did he know she loved to read? How did he know this was one of the books she always wanted to own, but never had money to buy? From his penthouse, Ethan smiled, imagining Olivia opening the present. He had researched her habits, knew she frequented the public library on Saturdays, that she always borrowed books of classic literature. He knew her dream was to finish her education degree and become a teacher. He knew she saved every penny to one day be able to buy her own books. And now, he was giving her exactly what she wanted. Soon she would understand that he could give her everything, absolutely everything. She just had to surrender to him. The hunt had begun, and Ethan Morgan never failed in his hunts. The presents continued to arrive. Every 2 days, Olivia found something at her apartment door. A bottle of French perfume, a box of Belgian chocolates, a silk scarf, all expensive, all carefully chosen, all without identification. She knew who was sending them. The certainty grew with each present, with each strange coincidence that happened in her life. The rent that mysteriously decreased because the landlord said he had received a tax incentive. The scholarship that appeared out of nowhere for her to resume college. The special promotions that Mrs. Jenkins's diner began to receive from suppliers. Olivia wasn't naive. She knew none of this was coincidence. Ethan Morgan was manipulating her life behind the scenes, and it made her furious and frightened in equal measure. "You need to stop this," she said, when she found him waiting at the door of the diner the following Wednesday. This time she was determined to confront him. "Stop what?" Ethan observed her with that almost imperceptible smile that she was learning to hate and desire at the same time. "You know very well what. The presents, the paid bills, the scholarship. Stop interfering in my life. Prove it was me." The response irritated her deeply. "I don't need to prove anything. You and I know the truth." "And what is the truth, Olivia?" She breathed deeply, trying to control the anger boiling in her chest. "The truth is that you're a man accustomed to buying everything you want, but I'm not for sale." Ethan took a step forward, reducing the space between them. Olivia smelled his masculine perfume, an intoxicating mix of wood and spices that made her head spin. "Everyone is for sale, Olivia. The question is finding the right currency." "You're wrong." She tried to sound firm, but her voice came out hoarser than intended. "Am I?" He tilted his head, studying her with that disturbing intensity. "Then why did you keep the presents? Why didn't you return them? Why didn't you report the mysterious man who is invading your life?" Olivia felt her face heat up. It was true. She could have thrown the flowers in the trash, returned the presents, refused the scholarship. But she did none of that. There was something about being desired in that way, about being the center of obsession for a man like Ethan Morgan, that affected parts of her she didn't even know existed. "That doesn't mean anything," she murmured, but they both knew it was a lie. "It means everything." Ethan raised his hand slowly, as if to touch her face, but stopped a few inches from her skin. "You feel this too, don't you? This tension between us, this need?" Olivia stepped back as if she had received an electric shock. "I don't feel anything." "Liar." The word came out as a low growl, full of dark promises. "Your eyes betray you, Olivia. They tell me exactly what you're feeling, even when your mouth says otherwise." She shook her head frantically. "You're crazy." "Maybe." Ethan smiled, and this time the smile reached his eyes, transforming him into something devastatingly beautiful and dangerous. "Crazy about you." Olivia felt the world spin around her. No man had ever spoken to her in that way, with such raw intensity and brutal honesty. It was terrifying and exciting at the same time. "I need to go," she said, trying to move past him. Ethan didn't stop her, but his voice followed her. "Sooner or later, you'll stop running from me, Olivia. And when that happens, I'll be here waiting." That night, Olivia couldn't sleep. She lay looking at the ceiling of her room, replaying every word Ethan had said, every look he had cast. There was something about him that awakened primitive instincts she didn't even know she possessed, a secret and dark part of her soul that wanted to surrender to that intensity, to be consumed by that obsessive passion. But another part, the rational part, screamed danger. Men like Ethan didn't love. They possessed, and when they tired of their possessions, they discarded them. Meanwhile, Ethan was in his penthouse, drinking whiskey and looking at the city stretched out at his feet. For the first time in his adult life, he felt vulnerable. Olivia had become his obsession, his weak point, his only weakness in a world where weaknesses were exploited mercilessly. He knew he was playing with fire. His business enemies had already noticed his distraction, his lack of focus in recent weeks. Richard, his assistant, had discreetly commented that some partners were questioning his recent decisions. Ethan was making the most dangerous mistake possible in his world. He was showing weakness, but he couldn't stop. Olivia was like a drug running in his veins, and the more he had of her, the more he needed her. The next day, he decided to change his strategy. Instead of waiting for her at the end of her shift, he appeared at the diner during busy hours. He sat at a corner table, ordered a coffee, and watched Olivia work. She saw him immediately and felt her heart race. There was something deeply disturbing about seeing him there in her workplace, occupying space in the small, safe world she had built for herself. "What are you doing here?" she asked when she finally approached his table. "Having coffee," Ethan responded simply, raising the cup. "There are better coffee shops in Midtown." "But you don't work in them." The brutal honesty of the answer made Olivia feel butterflies in her stomach. "You can't stay here bothering me during work. I'm not doing anything beyond drinking coffee and admiring the view." Olivia followed his gaze and realized it was fixed on her. She felt her face heat up and quickly moved away. Ethan stayed at the diner for 2 hours. He didn't try to talk to her again, just observed her work. Olivia felt his gaze burning her skin with every movement, every gesture. She was nervous, dropping things, mixing up orders. Mrs. Jenkins noticed and asked if she was feeling well. When he finally got up to leave, he left a $100 bill on the table. It was 10 times the value of the coffee. "For the excellent company," he said as he passed Olivia on his way to the door. She stood looking at that bill, feeling a confused mixture of anger and excitement. Ethan was marking territory, showing that he could invade any space of her life whenever he wanted. And the worst part was that a perverse part of her liked that obsessive attention. "Who is that man?" asked Mrs. Jenkins when Olivia finally put away the money. "Nobody important," Olivia lied. "Girl, I have 60 years of life. I know the look of a man in love when I see one, and that one is hopelessly in love with you." "He's not in love," Olivia protested. "He's obsessed." "Sometimes it's the same thing, dear. The question is, what are you going to do about it?" Olivia didn't know how to answer, because the truth was that she was beginning to become obsessed too. She dreamed of Ethan every night, woke up thinking about him, spent the entire day waiting for him to appear. It was as if he had planted a virus in her system, slowly corrupting her peace of mind. And when she got home that night and found a new gift, a first edition of The Great Gatsby with a handwritten dedication, she felt something within, her surrender. Not completely, but enough to leave her terrified of her own feelings. The war between them had begun, and Olivia was beginning to lose. Olivia's surrender was gradual, like sand slipping through fingers. It began when she stopped, complaining about the presents, then when she started to expect them, and finally, when she admitted to herself that the days when Ethan didn't appear were empty, grey, without purpose. He had established a routine. He appeared at the diner 3 times a week, always at the same time, always ordering just coffee. He stayed there for hours, working on his laptop, making calls, but always with his eyes returning to her. It was a silent dance they had both learned. He observed, she pretended not to notice, but both were painfully aware of the other's presence. "Are you going to keep pretending you don't see me?" he asked on a rainy Thursday, when the diner was almost empty. Olivia was cleaning the tables nearby, deliberately moving slowly because she knew he was watching. "I'm not pretending anything." "No?" Ethan closed his laptop and leaned back in his chair. "Then look at me." The challenge in his voice made Olivia stop. Slowly she raised her eyes and met his. The impact was immediate, as it always was. Those dark eyes seemed to see through her, search every corner of her soul, discover secrets she didn't even know she had. "There," she said, trying to sound indifferent. "I've looked. Now tell me you don't feel anything." Olivia opened her mouth to lie, as she had done so many times, but the words wouldn't come out. There was something in the way he was looking at her, an almost imperceptible vulnerability. Behind all that intensity, that completely disarmed her. She began, but her voice failed. Ethan rose slowly like a predator approaching wounded prey. "You feel it, don't you? This need, this hunger?" Olivia retreated until her back touched the wall. "Ethan, say my name again." His voice came out, hoarse, loaded with desire. "I like how it sounds on your lips." "I shouldn't." "Why not?" "Because—" Olivia struggled to find the right words. "Because you're dangerous." Ethan smiled, and there was something wild in that smile. "I am, especially for you." He was too close now, so close that Olivia could feel the heat emanating from his body, see the small lines around his eyes, smell his intoxicating perfume. Her heart was beating so hard she was sure he could hear it. "Why me?" she asked in a whisper. The question caught him off guard. Why her? It was something he asked himself during sleepless nights. Why this simple girl, without sophistication, without the artifices he was accustomed to, had managed to break through all his defenses? "Because you're real," he said finally. "In a world full of masks and lies, you're the only true thing I've found." Olivia felt tears sting her eyes. "I'm nothing special." "You're wrong." Ethan raised his hand, this time touching her face gently. Olivia didn't pull away. "You're everything." The touch was like electricity running through her skin. Olivia closed her eyes, allowing herself to feel for the first time the texture of his skin, the unexpected gentleness of his fingers against her cheek. "Ethan," she whispered, and there was surrender in that word. He leaned in, bringing his lips closer to hers, when the bell at the door rang. Olivia opened her eyes and quickly moved away, returning to work as if nothing had happened. A customer had entered, breaking the spell that enveloped them. Ethan remained there for a few more minutes, watching Olivia serve the customer with trembling hands before quietly leaving. That night Olivia found something different at her door. It wasn't a present, but an envelope. Inside was an elegant invitation and a handwritten note. "Come to my penthouse tomorrow at 8. It's time we stop pretending. E." Olivia held the invitation with trembling hands. It was the moment of truth. She could continue pretending that nothing was happening between them, that she didn't think about him constantly, that she didn't desire his hands on her skin, or she could accept that she had fallen hopelessly in love with a man who represented everything her rational life had always avoided. She spent the entire night awake, alternating between contradictory decisions. At 7 in the morning, she was decided not to go. At 2 in the afternoon, she had changed her mind. At 6 in the evening, she was choosing what to wear. Meanwhile, Ethan had cancelled all his meetings for the day. He was nervous like a teenager, obsessively checking if everything was perfect in his penthouse. He had sent for her favorite flowers. He had discovered they were white lilies through a conversation she had with Mrs. Jenkins that one of his men had overheard. He had ordered an intimate dinner prepared with dishes he knew she liked. But behind all the preparation, there was an anxiety that gnawed at him. What if she didn't show up? What if he had misinterpreted the signs? For the first time in his life, Ethan Morgan wasn't sure he would get what he wanted. At 8 o'clock sharp, the doorman of his building called. "Mr. Morgan, there's a young lady down here, says you're expecting her." Ethan's heart raced. "Send her up." Olivia wore a simple navy blue dress, the most elegant she owned, and low-heeled shoes that Mrs. Jenkins had lent her. She was as nervous as she had ever been in her life, her hands trembling in the elevator as she rode up 40 floors to the penthouse. When the doors opened, Ethan was waiting. He wore dark dress pants and a white shirt with the sleeves rolled up, a more casual look than she was used to seeing him in. But what impressed her was the expression on his face. There was relief there, as if he had really doubted she would. "Come." "You came," he said, and there was a vulnerability in his voice that surprised her. "I came," confirmed Olivia, stepping out of the elevator. The penthouse was stunning. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city, elegant, and modern furniture created a sophisticated but welcoming environment. But Olivia barely noticed the decor. She was entirely focused on the man in front of her. "Why did you invite me?" she asked. "Because I'm tired of games," answered Ethan with brutal honesty. "Because I want you, Olivia, and I think you want me too." Olivia felt her face heat up. "I don't know what I want." "Then let me show you." Ethan approached slowly, giving her time to step back if she wanted. But Olivia didn't step back. When he touched her face again, she leaned into the touch. "Are you afraid of me?" he asked. "Yes," she answered honestly. "You should be." His thumbs caressed her cheeks. "Because when you're mine, Olivia, you'll be completely mine. And I don't share what's mine." Instead of frightening her, the words sent a wave of heat throughout her body. There was something primitive in the way he talked about possessing her that awakened instincts she didn't even know she had. "And if I don't want to be yours?" she asked, testing the limits. Ethan smiled, and there were dark promises in that smile. "Oh, my sweet Olivia, you already are mine. You just haven't admitted it to yourself yet." And when he finally tilted his head and captured her lips with his, Olivia knew he was right. She had given herself up the moment she decided to. "Come up here." The kiss was gentle at first, almost hesitant. But when she sighed against his lips and surrendered completely, Ethan deepened the kiss, showing her a taste of the passion that awaited her. When they separated, both were breathless. "Now you're mine," he whispered against her lips. And Olivia, for the first time, didn't protest. Dinner was a sweet torture. Ethan had prepared everything in the minutest detail: grilled salmon with herbs that he knew she liked, smooth white wine that wouldn't intimidate her, low music that created an intimate atmosphere without being too obvious. But Olivia barely touched the food. She was hypnotized by the man in front of her, by the way he watched her, as if she were the only thing in the world that mattered. "You're not eating," observed Ethan, noticing the almost untouched plate. "I'm not hungry," lied Olivia. The truth was that she was famished, but not for food. The kiss had awakened something in her body that she had never felt before, an urgent need that pulsed between her legs and made her breasts tingle. "Nervous?" "A little." Olivia took a sip of wine, trying to calm her nerves. "This is all a lot for me." Ethan set down his fork and leaned forward. "Do you want to leave?" The question caught her by surprise. There was something in his voice, an almost imperceptible insecurity, revealing that behind all that confidence he was also nervous. "No," she responded quickly. "I want to stay." The relief that passed over his face was instantaneous. "Then, stay forever if you want." Olivia felt her heart race. "Ethan, I know it's too early to talk like this," he said, rising and walking around the table until he was beside her. "But I've never felt this before, Olivia. This need, this completeness." He extended his hand to her, and Olivia accepted it. Without hesitation, Ethan gently pulled her to stand, and suddenly they were too close again, the air between them charged with electricity. "You know I'm a virgin?" The question came out before Olivia could censor herself. Her face immediately heated up, mortified at having admitted something so intimate. Ethan's eyes darkened. "I knew." "How?" "By the way you react to my touch, by the innocence in your eyes, by the way you blush when I look at you like this." His fingers traced her cheek softly. "And that drives me crazy with desire." "Why?" "Because I'll be the first to touch you, the first to give you pleasure, the first to show you how good it can be to surrender completely." His voice was hoarse, loaded with dark promises. "And after me, Olivia, you'll never want anyone else." The words sent waves of heat throughout her body. Olivia knew she should be frightened by the possessive intensity in his voice, but instead, she felt a growing wetness between her legs. "Ethan," she whispered, not quite knowing what she was asking for. "Tell me what you want, Olivia." She closed her eyes, gathering courage. I want you to touch me." The low groan that escaped his throat was almost animal. "Are you sure?" In response, Olivia leaned in and pressed her lips against his. This time, the kiss wasn't hesitant. It was pure hunger, raw need. Ethan pulled her against his body, his hands traveling up her back, tangling in her hair. "Not here," he murmured against her lips when her hands began to explore his chest. "Not the first time. You deserve better." He picked her up easily, making her laugh softly in surprise. Olivia had never felt so feminine, so desired. Ethan carried her to his bedroom, and she had a vague impression of masculine elegance, dark tones, furniture of noble wood, a king-size bed that dominated the environment. He set her down gently at the foot of the bed, his hands trembling, slightly when he began to caress her face. "If you want to stop at any time," and he began. "I won't want to stop," Olivia interrupted with a conviction that surprised her. "Olivia..." There was adoration in his voice when he said her name. "Show me," she asked in a whisper. "Show me what it's like to be yours." The words broke the last barrier of Ethan's control. He kissed her with a desperate passion, his hands exploring every curve of her body over her dress. Olivia melted in his arms, small sounds of pleasure escaping her throat when he found sensitive spots she didn't even know existed. With careful movements, he slid the zipper of her dress, the fabric falling around her feet. Olivia stood there, in her simple but feminine lingerie, feeling exposed and powerful at the same time under his hungry gaze. "You're perfect," murmured Ethan, his hands tracing the exposed skin of her shoulders. "More perfect than I imagined." "You thought about me like this?" asked Olivia, blushing but curious. "Constantly." His hands descended the sides of her body. "Every night I imagined what it would be like to have you in my arms, what it would be like to hear you moan my name." The confession made Olivia feel powerful. Knowing she had managed to affect a man like Ethan that way was intoxicating. "Your turn," she said bravely, her hands going to the buttons of his shirt. Ethan let her undress him, watching fascinated, the concentration on her face as her inexperienced fingers struggled with the buttons. When she finally opened his shirt and saw his bare torso, defined muscles, tanned skin, a small scar near his heart, Olivia couldn't resist touching him. "How did you get this scar?" she asked, tracing the mark with a finger. Ethan's face closed for a moment, a reminder that trust is a luxury I can't afford. Olivia sensed there was a story there, probably painful, but didn't press. Instead, she leaned in and softly kissed the scar. She felt Ethan shudder under her lips. "Olivia," he said, his voice strangled. She raised her eyes to meet his. "What?" "If we continue, there will be no going back. You'll be mine, completely." "I already am yours," she responded with honesty. That surprised them both. It was all the confirmation Ethan needed. He laid her on the bed with a gentleness that contrasted with the urgency in his eyes, and spent the next hour showing her, with kisses and caresses, exactly what it meant to belong to Ethan Morgan. When they finally united, Olivia understood why people wrote poetry about love. It hadn't been just sex. It had been a complete transformation. In Ethan's arms, she had discovered a version of herself she didn't even know existed. Wild, sensual, powerful. Afterward, as they rested entwined, Ethan traced abstract patterns on her naked skin. "What are you thinking about?" asked Olivia. "About how I'm going to let you leave tomorrow," he admitted. "Who said I'm leaving?" Ethan propped himself up on his elbow to look at her. "You can't stay here forever, Olivia. You have your life, your work, and if I didn't want any of that anymore," the question came out before she could think better of it. "And if I just wanted this, you?" For a moment, Ethan looked like a man who had won the lottery, but then a shadow passed over his eyes. "My world is dangerous, Olivia. There are things in my life, people, who could hurt you." Then protect me. And if I can't? Olivia turned to face him. Then at least we will have lived this, however long it lasts. Ethan pulled her closer, burying his face in her hair. He wanted to protect her from everything, especially from himself. But it was too late. Olivia had become his weakness, his vulnerable point, and in his world, weaknesses were exploited mercilessly. But that night, with her safe in his arms, Ethan allowed himself to believe that perhaps, just perhaps, love was stronger than fear. Olivia woke up wrapped in silk sheets and Ethan's masculine scent. For a moment she was disoriented, not knowing where she was. Then memories of the previous night returned like an avalanche, their bodies intertwined, his hands exploring every inch of her, the sounds she had made when he brought her to ecstasy for the first time. Ethan was already awake, watching her, with an intensity that made her stomach knot with nervousness and desire. "Good morning," he said, his voice hoarse from sleep. "Good morning," responded Olivia, feeling her face heat up. In the daylight, the intimacy of the previous night seemed even more intense, more real. "Any regrets?" asked Ethan, and she noticed a carefully hidden vulnerability behind the casual question. "None," she answered honestly. "And you?" In response, he pulled her closer and kissed her with a tenderness that contrasted with the desperate passion of the previous night. "Never," he murmured against her lips. Olivia melted into that kiss, but then reality hit. "What time is it?" "I need to work." "You?" "Don't need to," said Ethan simply. "What do you mean I don't need to?" "I bought the diner." Olivia sat up in bed abruptly, pulling the sheet to cover her naked body. "You did what?" "I made an offer that Mrs. Jenkins couldn't refuse. She can now retire comfortably, and you—" He sat up too, reaching for her face. "You can stay here with me." "Ethan, you can't just buy my life." Olivia got out of bed looking for her clothes. "Mrs. Jenkins didn't even consult me. She thought she was doing what was best for you." "Best for me?" Olivia turned to face him, furious. "What would be best for me would be if I could make my own choices." Ethan also stood up, completely naked and without any modesty. The sight of his magnificently sculpted body almost distracted her from her anger. Almost. "Olivia, I just want to take care of you." "By controlling me? By buying everything around me, until I have no choice but to stay with you?" The accusation hit him like a slap. "That's not it, isn't it?" Olivia was quickly putting on her dress, her hands trembling with anger. "Then explain to me the difference between caring and controlling." Ethan ran his hands through his hair, frustrated. He wasn't used to being questioned, especially not by someone he loved. "In my world, Olivia, protecting someone means having control over the variables that can hurt them. I'm not a variable, I'm a person. You're the most important person." "In the world to me," he said with an intensity that made her stop. "And there are people who could use that against me, against us." Olivia saw something in his eyes that made her pause. Fear. Ethan Morgan, the man who seemed to control everything and everyone, was afraid. "What people?" she asked more calmly. Ethan hesitated. Telling the truth would mean exposing her to a world he had spent years trying to leave behind. But hiding would mean losing her trust. 5 years ago, I was in negotiations to acquire a mining company in Montana, he began, putting on pants. I discovered they were involved in illegal deforestation, slave labor. I exposed everything, made sure they were prosecuted. Olivia sat on the edge of the bed, listening. "The man who ran the operation is named Michael Simmons. He lost everything because of me. He went to prison but got out 2 years ago, and since then—" Ethan touched the scar on his chest. "He has made a point of reminding me that he's still out there." "Was he the one who gave you that scar?" "One of his men. One night when I was leaving a meeting, if my driver hadn't reacted quickly—" Ethan left the sentence hanging. Olivia felt her blood freeze. "And you think he might use me to get to you?" "I know he can. That's why I need to protect you, Olivia. It's not about control, it's about keeping you alive." The revelation completely changed her perspective on his actions. The purchase of the diner, the presents, the possessive way he talked about her, it all made sense now. Why didn't you tell me this before? Because I hoped he had given up, that he had moved on. Ethan approached her cautiously. But last night when you came here, my security men noticed we were being watched. Olivia's heart raced. Watched by whom? We're still investigating, but I can't take risks with your safety. Olivia processed the information in silence. Her life had become dangerous overnight simply by getting involved with Ethan. It was terrifying and, strangely, also exciting. What does this mean for us? She asked. It means you need to stay here where I can protect you. Like a prisoner? Like the woman I love, said Ethan, with a conviction that left her breathless. It was the first time he had used the word love. Olivia felt tears sting her eyes. Ethan, I know it's too early to talk about love, he continued, coming closer, but it's what I feel. And I can't lose you, Olivia. Not now that I've finally found something real in my life. Olivia stood up and touched his face. Do you really love me? Hopelessly, he answered, covering her hand with his, to the point of doing anything to keep you safe. Even letting you go if that's what you want. The offer surprised her. It was the first time Ethan had given her a real choice. And if I stay? What happens then? Then you become my true partner, not just in bed, but in life. You get to know my world, my business, my secrets, and I do everything to eliminate any threat that might exist against you. Would that include killing someone? The question was direct, without beating around the bush. Ethan appreciated her honesty. If necessary, yes. Olivia felt a chill. She was in love with a man who would kill to protect her. She should be. Horrified, but instead she felt strangely protected. I need to think, she said finally. How much time do you need? A few hours, maybe a day. Ethan nodded, though every instinct in him screamed not to let her out of his reach. My driver will take you wherever you want to go, but you take 2 security guards. Ethan, it's not negotiable, he said firmly. Until we decide what to do about Michael Simmons, you don't stay alone, not for a second. Olivia wanted to protest, but she saw the determination in his eyes and knew it would be useless. All right. When she was preparing to leave, Ethan pulled her in for one more kiss. This time there was desperation there, as if he was saying goodbye. Come back to me, he whispered against her lips. I will, promised Olivia. But as she descended in the elevator, escorted by 2 men in dark suits, she wondered if she really would return. Because accepting Ethan's love meant also accepting his world. A world where danger was constant, where choices were made based on fear, where love could be a death sentence. And for the first time since she met him, Olivia wasn't sure if she was ready for that. Across town, Michael Simmons smiled, seeing the photos his men had taken of Olivia leaving Ethan's building. He had finally found the weakness of the man who had destroyed his life, and he planned to exploit it completely. Olivia asked to be taken to Battery Park. She needed the water, the salty air, the sound of the waves to be able to think clearly. Ethan's 2 security guards accompanied her at a respectful distance, but she could feel them watching her every movement. She sat on a bench, still warm from the morning sun, and tried to process everything that had happened in the last 24 hours. She had lost her virginity to a man who declared himself in love with her, discovered her life was in danger because of this same man, and now had to decide if she was willing to live in a world where love came accompanied by death threats. Put like that, it sounds crazy, she murmured, to herself, watching the waves break against the shore. But it wasn't that simple. What she felt for Ethan went beyond reason. It was as if he had awakened a part of her that had always been dormant. In his arms, for the first time in her life, she had felt completely alive, completely a woman, completely loved. Her cell phone rang, interrupting her thoughts. It was an unknown number. Hello? Olivia? The voice on the other end was male, but she didn't recognize it. Yes. Who's speaking? My name is Michael Simmons. I think we need to talk. Olivia's blood froze. The man Ethan had mentioned, the threat hanging over them. I don't have anything to talk to you about. Oh, but you do, dear, you have a lot. For example, did you know that Ethan Morgan isn't the man you think he is? Olivia looked around, searching for her security guards. They were about 20, meters away, talking among themselves, apparently relaxed. How had Michael gotten her number? How did he know where she was? I don't know what you're talking about, she said, trying to keep her voice firm. Of course you do. He told you about me, didn't he? Painted me as the villain of the story? Michael laughed, and there was cruelty in that sound. But you know his version of the facts. How about hearing mine? I'm not interested. Not even if I tell you that. Ethan has blood on his hands? That his businesses aren't as clean as he makes them seem? Olivia felt her stomach turn. You're lying. Am I? Then why did your parents die in that accident, Olivia? The world stopped. Olivia felt as if the ground had opened beneath her feet. What did you say? Ah, he didn't tell you, did he? How interesting. Maria Stone and James Stone. Yes, I know your parents' names, and I know how they died. It was a car accident, Olivia whispered, feeling nauseous. Was it? Or was it because your father discovered something he shouldn't have about Ethan's business? You're lying, repeated Olivia, but her voice came out shaky. Your father worked as a driver for one of the third-party companies that provided services to the Morgan Group. He saw things, Olivia, documents, transfers, and when he tried to report them... Stop, Olivia pleaded, tears beginning to stream down her face. Meet me at Liberty Coffee in Soho in an hour. Come alone and I'll show you the truth about the man you think you love. The call ended. Olivia sat looking at the phone, trembling. It couldn't be true. Ethan wouldn't be capable of... But then she remembered the scar on his chest, the cold way he had talked about eliminating threats, the naturalness with which he admitted he would kill to protect her. One of the security guards approached. Is everything all right, Miss Olivia? She quickly wiped away the tears. I'm fine, I just need to go back home. During the trip back to her apartment, Olivia fought contradictory thoughts. Michael Simmons was Ethan's enemy. He could be lying to manipulate her. But what if he wasn't? What if Ethan really was involved in her parents' death? When she arrived at her apartment, she asked the security guards to wait outside. She needed to be alone to think. They protested, but she insisted, promising not to leave. An hour later, Olivia was climbing down the fire escape of the building. She had left her cell phone in the apartment, so they couldn't track her, and exited through the back door. She knew she was taking an enormous risk, but she needed to know the truth. Liberty Coffee was full when she arrived. Olivia searched with her eyes until she saw a man of approximately 50, with grey hair, sitting alone at a table in the back. He waved to her. Michael Simmons didn't look like a criminal. He wore simple clothes, had a tired face, and eyes that seemed to carry much suffering. When Olivia approached, he stood up politely. Olivia, thank you for coming. I shouldn't be here, she said, but sat down anyway. I know, but you need to hear what I have to tell you. Michael picked up a folder that was next to the chair. These are documents your father copied before he died. He was investigating irregularities in the contracts of the company where he worked. Olivia took the papers with trembling hands. They were copies of financial documents, contracts, emails. At the top of several pages was the Morgan Group logo. Your father discovered that Ethan was using the transport company to launder money from other operations. Dirty money, Olivia, from trafficking, from exploitation of slave labor, from bribing politicians. This doesn't prove that Ethan ordered them killed, Olivia said, though her voice was failing. Michael took out another document. This is an email your father sent to an investigative journalist 2 days before he died. He was planning to expose everything. Olivia read the email, recognizing her father's digital handwriting. He really was planning to report what he had discovered. And this, Michael continued, is the accident investigation report. Note the inconsistencies. The car's brakes had been sabotaged. Olivia felt the world spin around her. No, it can't be. Ethan Morgan ordered your parents killed, Olivia. And now he has seduced you, made you fall in love with him. It's the perfect irony, don't you think? Tears were now flowing freely down her face. It all made sense in a horrible way. The way Ethan had appeared in her life, how he knew so much about her, how he had taken care of her debts and problems. It wasn't love, it was guilt. "Why are you telling me this?" she asked through her tears. "Because you deserve the truth and because—" Michael leaned forward. "Because I need your help to bring justice." "My help?" "Ethan trusts you now. You have access to his life, to his business. You can get evidence that I could never get." Olivia shook her head. "I can't—" "Your parents deserve justice, Olivia, and you're the only one who can give it to them." At that moment, Olivia heard a familiar voice behind her. "Olivia!" She turned and saw Ethan entering the coffee shop, accompanied by 4 men in suits. His eyes were wild with worry and anger. Michael smiled. "See you later, Olivia. Think about what we discussed." He stood up and calmly left through the back door before Ethan's men could reach him. Ethan reached the table, his face a mask of controlled fury. "What are you doing here? Why did you leave without the security guards?" Olivia stared at him, now seeing him with completely different eyes. The man she had fallen in love with, the man who had shown her what love was, the man in whose arms she had lost her virginity, was the same man who had killed her parents. "Olivia," Ethan said more softly, noticing the tears on her face. "What happened? What did Michael tell you?" She rose slowly, the document still in her hands. "The truth," she said, her voice cold as ice. "He told me the truth." And for a moment, before the mask returned to its place, Olivia saw something in Ethan's eyes that confirmed all her worst fears. Guilt. The journey back to the penthouse was made in sepulchral silence. Olivia was in the back seat of Ethan's car, the documents Michael had given her pressed against her chest, looking out the window without seeing anything. Ethan tried to speak to her twice, but she simply ignored him. When they arrived at the penthouse, Olivia went straight to the bedroom, locked the door, and threw herself on the bed where, just the night before, she had completely surrendered to the man she now discovered had killed her parents. The irony was so cruel it made her want to vomit. Ethan knocked on the door. "Olivia, open up. We need to talk." "We have nothing to talk about," she shouted through the door, her voice choked. With tears, "Olivia, please. Let me explain." "Explain." She opened the door abruptly, her face red from crying so much. "How do you explain murder, Ethan? How do you explain seducing the daughter of the people you had killed?" The accusation hit him like a punch to the stomach. "It wasn't like that, wasn't it?" Olivia waved the documents. "Then explain these papers to me. Explain why my father was investigating your dirty business. Explain why the brakes of their car were sabotaged." Ethan entered the room, closing the door behind him. For the first time since Olivia had known him, he looked vulnerable, almost defeated. "I didn't order your parents killed," he said calmly. "Liar." "I didn't know they were your parents when it happened, Olivia. I only found out after I started investigating you." Olivia felt as if she had been slapped. "So you knew? You knew who I was when you seduced me?" Ethan's silence was answer enough. "My God," Olivia whispered, bringing her hands to her face. "You planned all of this. Meeting me, seducing me. It was all calculated." "In the beginning, yes," Ethan admitted, and the brutal honesty in his voice was like a blade. "When I discovered who you were, I thought of a way to compensate for what had happened." "Compensate?" Olivia was shouting now. "You thought that sleeping with me would compensate for having killed my parents?" "No," Ethan approached, but she backed away. "Olivia, listen to me. In the beginning it might have been guilt, but afterwards, I really fell in love with you. How can I believe anything you say? How do I know you're not lying? Now too," Ethan ran his hands through his hair, desperate, "because I'm here humiliating myself, begging you to listen to me, when I could simply lock you here until you forgive me." "Lock me in then," Olivia challenged him. "Show who you really are." "You already know who I am," he said softly. "A man who did terrible things to protect his empire. A man who let greed and power corrupt his soul. A man who, when he finally found redemption, discovered it cost more than he could have imagined." Olivia saw tears, in Ethan's eyes for the first time. The sight shook her more than she would like to admit. "Tell me the truth," she said, wiping her own tears. "All of it. And then I'll decide if I can forgive you or if I should hate you forever." Ethan sat heavily in the armchair, seeming to have aged 10 years. 5 years ago, I was expanding the business very rapidly. I wanted to be the biggest conglomerate in the country, no matter what it cost. I made questionable partnerships, laundered money, bought silences. I was a monster, Olivia. She sat on the edge of the bed, forcing herself to listen. "Your father worked for one of the companies that provided services to me. He discovered the irregularities and began to investigate. When my partners found out..." Ethan closed his eyes. "They said James Stone was a threat that needed to be eliminated. And you agreed? I said to threaten him, to offer him money, to find a way to silence him without violence, but..." His voice failed. "My partners decided it was better to ensure he would never talk. You could have prevented it." "Yes," admitted Ethan, "I could have, and that guilt has eaten at me for years. That's why I got out of those businesses, Olivia. That's why I exposed Michael Simmons and others. I was trying to redeem myself. Too late for that, don't you think?" "I completely agree." Ethan opened his eyes and faced her. "That's why when I discovered who you were, I thought fate was giving me a chance to make things right. To take care of you, to protect you, to compensate in some way. By lying to me. By trying not to hurt you even more than I already had." Olivia processed everything in silence. There was a perverse part of her that understood the distorted logic behind Ethan's actions, but understanding didn't mean forgiving. "Did you really love me?" she finally asked. "Or was it always guilt and convenience?" "Olivia," Ethan knelt, before her, taking her hands. "Last night, when you gave yourself to me, was the first time in my life I felt I was doing something purely out of love, without calculations, without ulterior motives, just love. How can I believe you? Because I'm telling you the truth, knowing I could lose you forever because of it." Olivia pulled her hands away, standing up. "I need to get out of here. I need to think." "Olivia." "No." She turned to him. "You owe me this, Ethan. You owe me the chance to decide what to do with this information without you influencing me." Ethan nodded slowly. "Where do you want to go?" "To a hotel. Alone." "I can't let you stay alone, Michael." "Michael is the least of my problems right now," Olivia interrupted. "At least he was honest with me." The observation cut deep. Ethan stood up, defeated. "Your security guards will go with you. At a distance, but they will." "Fine." As Olivia packed a bag with some clothes, Ethan watched her, memorizing each movement. He knew he might be seeing her for the last time. "Olivia," he said as she was leaving, "whatever you decide, I want you to know these were the best days of my life. And if I could go back in time, I would do everything differently. Everything." Olivia stopped at the door but didn't turn around. "I know," she said softly, "and that's what makes all of this even more tragic." After she left, Ethan remained alone in the penthouse that suddenly seemed too empty, too silent. He picked up the phone and dialed a number he hadn't used in years. "Father Peter, it's Ethan Morgan, I need to confess." Across town, Olivia checked into a modest hotel room in Midtown. She was physically and emotionally exhausted, but knew she wouldn't be able to sleep. There were decisions to make, and all of them seemed impossible. She loved Ethan, that was undeniable. But how could she stay with the man responsible for her parents' death? On the other hand, how could she live without him now that she knew the intensity of the love that existed between them? Her cell phone rang. It was Michael Simmons. "I heard you had an interesting conversation," he said. "How do you know?" "I have eyes everywhere, dear. So, will you help me bring justice?" Olivia looked out the hotel window, seeing the city lights, twinkling like fallen stars. "I'm still deciding." "Don't take too long. Justice doesn't wait forever." When the call ended, Olivia lay on the bed and cried until she fell asleep. And in her dreams, she saw her parents and Ethan, and desperately tried to find a way to save them all. but some situations had no possible salvation. Olivia spent 3 days in the hotel, 3 days that seemed like an eternity. Ethan didn't. Try to contact her, respecting her request for space, but she knew the security guards were nearby. Michael called twice a day, gradually increasing the pressure for her to make a decision. On the 3rd day, Olivia decided she needed more information before choosing between love and vengeance. She called an old college colleague who worked as an investigative journalist. "Ryan, it's Olivia. I need a favor." "Olivia, long time, sure. What do you need?" "Can you investigate some things for me, discreetly?" "Depends on what it is." Olivia hesitated. "I need you to investigate Michael Simmons and also some documents about Morgan Group business." There was a pause on the other end. "Olivia, those are dangerous territories. Are you sure?" "I am, and Ryan, I need it to be confidential, completely confidential." "All right, send me what you have." Olivia photographed all the documents Michael had given her and sent them to Ryan. Then she waited, pacing the room like a caged animal. The response came the next morning. "Olivia, I need to see you in person. It's about the information you sent me." They met at a small bakery in Soho. Ryan seemed nervous, constantly looking around. "What did you discover?" asked Olivia, without preamble. "Several things. First, about Michael Simmons." Ryan opened a file on his laptop. "He's not just a businessman who lost everything because of Ethan Morgan. He has had connections to drug trafficking for over 10 years. Olivia felt her stomach turn. "What do you mean?" "The mining company that Ethan exposed was a front for money laundering from drug trafficking. Michael wasn't an innocent victim, Olivia. He was one of the operation's bosses. But the documents he showed me are genuine. Your father really was investigating irregularities, but here's the problem." Ryan showed other documents on the screen. "I got access to Michael Simmons's phone records from that time. Guess who he called the day before your parents' accident?" Olivia felt her blood freeze. "Who?" "One of Ethan's partners. Several times, long conversations." "What does that mean?" "It means Michael Simmons might have been the one who really ordered your parents' death, and then let Ethan take the blame." Olivia's world collapsed again. Everything she thought she knew was wrong. "But why would Ethan take the blame?" "Because he really was guilty of other things," explained Ryan. "His businesses were dirty, Olivia, I don't deny that. But specifically about your parents, I think he was used as a scapegoat." Olivia leaned back in her chair, trying to process the information. "And now, Michael wants me to help incriminate Ethan." "Olivia," Ryan took her hand, "Michael Simmons is dangerous. If you don't do what he wants, he could hurt you. But if you do, you might be helping to destroy an innocent man. Ethan isn't innocent. Maybe not in other things, but in your parents' death, he might be." Olivia left the bakery with her head spinning. She no longer knew who to trust, what to believe. She decided to do something she hadn't done in years. She visited the church where her parents were married. She was kneeling in the front pew, looking at the crucifix when someone sat beside her. By the stiffness of her muscles, she immediately knew who it was. "I didn't come here to talk to you," she said, without looking at Ethan. "I know. I came here to talk to him," Ethan responded, indicating the crucifix. "It's been years since I entered a church." They remained in silence for a few minutes. "I discovered some things about Michael," said Olivia finally. "I know. Your journalist. Friend isn't as discreet as he thinks." Olivia turned to face him. "You followed us." "I protected you," corrected Ethan. "Michael has men all over the city looking for you. If I didn't have security taking care of you..." "Why didn't you tell me about Michael, about who he really is?" Ethan sighed. "Because it wouldn't change anything. I still allowed horrible things to happen under my responsibility. I still laundered dirty money. I was still complicit in crimes." "But you didn't kill my parents." "Not directly, but I created the environment that allowed it to happen." Olivia studied his profile. There was a deep exhaustion in his features, as if he hadn't slept for days. "Michael wants me to help him incriminate you," she said. "And will you do that?" Olivia hesitated. "I don't know. 3 days ago I would have. Now, I no longer know what is true. The truth is that you have to make the choice you can live with, said Ethan softly. If turning me in will bring you peace, then do it. And if I can't live without you? The question escaped before she could censor herself. Ethan turned. To her, surprise and hope battling in his eyes. Olivia? No, she stood up. Don't say anything. I'm still deciding. That night, Olivia was in the hotel when her phone rang. It was Michael, but this time his voice was different, colder, more threatening. I'm losing. Patience, Olivia. I need more time. There is no more time. Either you do what we agreed or I'll have to use less civilized methods. Are you threatening me? I'm being clear. You have until noon tomorrow to bring me evidence against Ethan. If you don't do that, I'll expose to the media that you're his accomplice, that you're protecting the man who killed your own parents. But that's not true. It doesn't matter if it's true or not. What matters is what people will believe. And after your reputation is destroyed, after you're ostracized by society, well, accidents happen. The line went dead. Olivia sat staring at the phone, trembling. Michael had shown his true face. He wasn't a man seeking justice. He was a criminal trying to use her pain for his own ends. She picked up her cell phone and dialed a number she had memorized but never used. Ethan, it's me. Olivia. The relief in his voice was palpable. Are you all right? No, Michael threatened. Me, I think I'm in real danger now. Where are you? Olivia gave the hotel address. Stay where you are, don't leave the room, I'm coming. 20 minutes later, Ethan knocked on the door. When Olivia opened it, he immediately pulled her into his arms. I thought I had lost you forever, he murmured, into her hair. You still might have, she said, but didn't move away from the embrace. But not to Michael Simmons. Ethan moved back to look her in the eyes. What have you decided? Ethan asked. Olivia took a deep breath. I've decided that, whatever happens, I won't let a criminal use my pain to destroy more lives, even if that means protecting the man who was part of my parents' death. Olivia, no, she placed a finger on his lips. We won't resolve this tonight. Tonight we'll survive. Tomorrow we'll face Michael Simmons. Together. Ethan kissed her forehead softly. Together, he agreed. But they both knew that Michael Simmons wouldn't be easily defeated, and that the final battle was just beginning. The final confrontation happened in the most unlikely place, the cemetery where Olivia's parents were buried. Michael had called the next morning, demanding she come there at noon, alone, with the E. Evidence against Ethan, or face the consequences. Olivia arrived 5 minutes late deliberately, finding Michael standing in front of Maria and James Stone's gravestone. The image of him there, pretending respect for the people he had ordered killed, made anger boil in her veins. You came, said Michael without turning around. I came. Olivia kept her voice firm, though her heart was racing. And did you bring what I asked for? No. Michael turned slowly, and Olivia saw that there were 2 armed men positioned behind nearby trees. Her mouth went dry with fear, but she forced herself to remain still. That's disappointing, Olivia, very disappointing. The only disappointing thing here is discovering that the man who pretended to help me is actually the murderer of my parents. Michael laughed, a cold sound without humor. Ah, so your boyfriend told you his version of the story? It wasn't Ethan who told me. It was my own investigation. Olivia took a step forward, brave. I know it was you who ordered their death when you discovered my father was investigating your money laundering operation. Prove it. I can, and I will. Olivia took a digital recorder from her pocket. Including this conversation of ours, which is being recorded and transmitted live to the authorities. Michael's face contorted with rage. You're not as smart as you think, girl. He signaled to the armed men. That's when Ethan emerged from behind a mausoleum, accompanied by 6 armed security guards. Actually, she's smarter than both of us combined. Michael drew a gun, but he was already surrounded. Ethan Morgan. How touching, coming to save your little girlfriend. I didn't come to save anyone, said Ethan calmly, walking until he stood beside Olivia. I came to watch you get arrested for the murder of Maria and James Stone. You don't have proof? Yes, we do. A new voice joined the conversation. It was Ryan, the journalist, coming out from behind another tree with a camera. I have everything recorded. Your confessions, your threats to Olivia, and especially your admission of guilt. Michael looked around, realizing he was trapped. You think this will stick in court? I have lawyers, I have money. You had, corrected Ethan. Your accounts were frozen this morning, when the authorities received all the evidence that Olivia and Ryan collected against you. At that moment, police sirens were heard in the distance, rapidly approaching. Michael, realizing he was lost, pointed the gun at Olivia. If I'm going down, at least I'll take her with me. But Olivia was no longer paralyzed by fear. All the suffering, all the pain, all the confusion of the last days had transformed into a fierce strength. With a quick movement she had learned in the self-defense classes Ethan had insisted she take, Olivia disarmed Michael with a precise blow to his wrist. The gun flew away, and Ethan immediately subdued Michael, immobilizing him on the ground. It's over, said Olivia, breathing heavily. It's finally over. The police cars arrived and Michael Simmons was arrested in flagrante delicto. As he was being led away in handcuffs, he shouted to Olivia, "You'll regret this. I have contacts. I have people who will—" "No," interrupted Olivia, surprising everyone with the strength in her voice. "You don't have anything anymore. And, even if you did, I'm not afraid of you anymore. I've learned that some people don't deserve our fear, only our justice." After the police left with Michael and his recorded confessions, Olivia was left alone with Ethan in the cemetery. She knelt before her parents' gravestone, placing fresh flowers she had brought. "We did it, Mom, Dad," she whispered. "The man who hurt you will finally pay." Ethan knelt beside her. "Olivia, I know there's still a lot between us that needs to be resolved." "Ethan," she turned to face him, "have you really changed? Left all the dirty business behind?" "Completely. In the last 2 years, I've donated half my fortune to social causes, closed all questionable companies, and now only work with clean and transparent investments." "Why?" "Because one day I hope to find someone who would make me want to be a better man. And when I found you, I knew you were that person." Olivia felt tears stream down her face. "Do you really love me? Not out of guilt, not out of obligation, but truly." Ethan took her hands. "Olivia Stone, you are the most real, most pure, most courageous thing that has ever happened in my life. You faced a dangerous criminal to bring justice for your parents. You forgave me when I didn't deserve forgiveness. You showed me it's possible to start over, no matter how dark a person's past is." "Ethan, I love you," he said with absolute conviction. "I love you with every broken piece of my soul. I love you enough to let you go if that's what you want, or I love you enough to spend the rest of my life proving I deserve your trust." Olivia looked at her parents' gravestone, then at Ethan. "My parents always taught me that everyone deserves a second chance, as long as they truly work to earn it. And you worked. You changed. You risked yourself to protect me, even knowing I could betray you." Olivia smiled through her tears. "So yes, Ethan Morgan, I accept your second chance." The kiss that followed was different from all others. There wasn't just passion there, but forgiveness, hope, and the promise of a future built on truth instead of secrets. 6 months later, Olivia was in Ethan's penthouse, now also her home, preparing dinner. She had resumed her education studies, financed by a scholarship Ethan had created anonymously for young orphans. She worked part-time at an NGO that helped underprivileged families, using the money Ethan insisted on giving for her personal causes. "How was the trial today?" she asked when Ethan arrived home. "Michael was sentenced to 25 years in prison," he answered, embracing her from behind. "Finally justice. And how do you feel?" "Free," admitted Ethan. "For the first time in years, I feel truly free." Olivia turned in his arms. "Me too." "I have something for you," said Ethan, taking a small velvet box from his pocket. Olivia felt her heart race. "Ethan, it's not what you're thinking," he laughed. "Not yet, it's something different. Inside the box was a delicate necklace with a pendant in the shape of the northern lights. "For the woman who brought light to my darkest world," he said, placing the necklace around her neck. "Ethan, it's beautiful." "Olivia," he took her hands. "I know it's still early. I know we're still building our trust, but I need you to know. I want to spend the rest of my life by your side. I want to have children with you, grow old with you, be better for you every day." "And I want that too," responded Olivia, sealing the promise with a kiss. Outside, the city of New York glittered like diamonds scattered over black velvet. But inside that penthouse, two hearts that had found each other through the shadows finally knew peace. Love had won. Not because it was easy, but because it was real. Not because it was perfect, but because it was true. And sometimes, that's all we need to start over. Olivia and Ethan had learned that there is no love without scars, but that some scars, when healed with true love, become the strongest.